'Tis the season. It's that time of the year where kids start to ask their parents for pet chameleons. And while chameleons are certainly amazing animals and can make great pets for some people, there are some extra considerations we need to think about when deciding if a chameleon is a good fit for you and your family. I'm going to share with you guys some of my experiences, some of my advice, so then you guys know exactly what you're getting yourself into. So without further ado, let's get into the video. And you guys have been asking me for merch for a while, so I now have Neptune the Chameleon swag. This is the t-shirt, but it also comes in hoodies, crew necks, tank tops, t-shirts of all different kinds, including kid sizes, so feel free to grab one, and who knows, it might make a good Christmas present. Just saying. A pet chameleon should never be a surprise for someone. They should know all of the research themselves, and they should genuinely want the animal. You have to consider also the lifespan of a chameleon. On average, 5 to 7 years is the current lifespan number that people are throwing around. So I'd plan for at least 7 years, so make sure that you're able to make that commitment. Life happens, things change, people move, so I would also strongly encourage you to have a plan B. If at any point you have to rehome the chameleon, that you already have a set plan in place or a person put in place so that you don't have to worry about that. The next thing that people always ask me is like, what age is appropriate for someone to have a pet chameleon when we're talking about kids? And while I would love to put a number on it, it's not so much the age of the kid and the child, but more so the responsibility level and the parental involvement. So if we want to throw out a ballpark, I would say at least 10 years old would probably be a good age range, ideally like 12, 13. But again, I don't know your kid and their responsibility level, and I'm totally aware that that's subjective. What is super important though is that your kid has the responsibility and the awareness of everything that I'm going to talk about, and the willingness, to care for this animal. And more importantly, like, this is not an animal that you can kind of let your kid run on their own. Chameleons have a very, very small margin for error when it comes to their care, and that's why they have the reputation that they do of being advanced reptiles. But if you as a parent can learn alongside your child and can be just as knowledgeable in their care, then I think you can be super successful. I would never, though, recommend a chameleon for a child, but I'm mindful that it is possible as long as you put in the time in the research. And I'm hoping that if you're watching this video, then you're making that first step, that first effort to really see what is involved when it comes to chameleon care. So this video is not a care video. I have literally 100 videos on YouTube right now that go into detailed chameleon care. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to talk about literally everything else besides chameleon care. But I just want to put a couple little things I think that are worth considering about chameleon care to see if it's a good fit for you and your family. So a big thing when we're talking about kids and chameleons is the interaction. So chameleons are look-at pets. I always use the analogy that they're similar to a pet fish, where it's an animal that's super, super cool that you look at, but it's not an animal that you're handling often, that you're taking with you to the grocery store, that you're snuggling up with on the couch. Now, some kids want a pet where they can touch it, hold it, snuggle it, and that's fine. A chameleon is not that pet, so there needs to be very, very clear expectations that this is an animal that we look at, that we enjoy, but we're not going to be handling it often. They will most likely be terrified of you and potentially hiss and bite at you, and that's just the reality of a chameleon. So as long as everyone's on the same page, then that's important. Another thing to consider when it comes to chameleon care that people don't quite realize, initially at least, is that you're basically also going to have pet bugs. Chameleons are insectivores, which means they exclusively only eat live bugs, which means you will have hundreds of crickets, roaches, worms within your home. And it's not just having them, you also have to feed the bugs, which means going to the grocery store and getting them the correct gut load, which are different fruits and vegetables that you feed to the bug. So you basically have pet bugs with your pet chameleon, and that's something that you have to be okay with. Chameleons are considered advanced reptiles, and the reason for this is that there's a very low margin for error, which means there's very little room for mistakes. And if you do make a mistake with their UVB, their supplement, their cage, their enclosure, any of that, then odds are you will get a sick chameleon and they will die. They're just not forgiving when it comes to making mistakes. That being said, if you do the correct research and set them up correctly and listen to correct chameleon care information, then you're set up for success. It's just when people cut corners or have the incorrect information, that's when you end up with sick chameleons, and that's when you end up with dead chameleons. So I just want to preface that chameleons are considered advanced reptiles because of that reason. And just a high-level overview, you can see behind me I have chameleon enclosures. The minimum size for a Jackson's veiled and panther chameleon, which are the most common species kept in captivity and in the pet trade, is going to be 2 feet wide by 2 feet deep by 4 feet tall. You're going to need a UVB bulb. You're going to need a heat bulb. You're going to need some sort of misting system or way to hydrate your chameleon. You will need branches. You will need plants. You will need bugs, gut load, supplementation. All of these are part of chameleon care, and I have very, very, very detailed videos about each one of those things, are their very own video on how to properly care for a chameleon. I have videos on how to set up the enclosure, what is the best beginner chameleon, what age chameleon, what cage do I need to buy, what supplies do I need to buy, how do I put all the stuff on the inside, how do I attach stuff to the screen, how do I supplement gut, like all of that. I have videos on. Again, that's not the purpose of this video, but just know that they're available on my channel. If you search on there, you will find tons and tons of detailed chameleon care information that is correct, which is the most important part because there's tons of incorrect information out there. And then one other thing to consider as a parent is that chameleons are nocturnal and they're hypoallergenic. So you don't have to worry about fur getting everywhere, or if your kid has an allergy, when you don't have to worry about hearing them climb around, like other animals at night. So that's all great. Just be mindful that some people do have allergies to like the roaches, I believe. Not super common, but if your kid is super sensitive to allergens, then that's something that you may want to investigate a little bit further. An important consideration when we're thinking about getting our kid a pet is the cost behind it. So there is quite a bit of upfront cost with the chameleon, and then of course there's going to be reoccurring costs. So the chameleon itself can be anywhere from $100 to probably like $500 depending on the species and where you get your chameleon. Pro tip, do not buy from Petco or PetSmart, buy from a reputable breeder. Again, I have videos on how to find a reputable breeder, so I'd highly recommend you do that. Don't go to a pet store or PetSmart or anything like that. Reason being is they're typically sick, and then you're just setting yourself up for failure, right? Even if you have the perfect enclosure and everything, but you bring home a sick animal, not a high chance of success. But the real cost is going to be the enclosure, the setup, everything that goes into it. So you can expect to spend around $300 to $500 if you're balling on a budget, and easily you could drop $1,000 on a chameleon enclosure. That's if you want to kind of go best case scenario. That's like going to be the automatic misting system, lights on timers, best of the best, cage lights, all that, which is definitely recommended. And you could, there's ways to save costs, right? Instead of getting the $150 automatic misting system, you can pick up the $1 spray bottle from the Dollar Tree. Like, there are ways to cut costs, but the minimum I would say is like $300 to $500. But feel free to shop the sales, and you can also build your own enclosure. Like, there's ways, just know that there is upfront cost. And then reoccurring costs, things that you can expect to spend on a weekly, monthly basis, are for sure the bugs. You can expect to buy those about every other week. They are available to purchase online, so you don't have to go to the Petco or PetSmart or local reptile shop. I purchase my bugs online, and I will actually buy some of them in like bulk, larger quantities, especially things like roaches and worms that have a longer shelf life than say the crickets do. And then you also will need to replace their heat bulbs once they go out every few months. Their UVB bulb should be replaced. Gut load you will need to buy for the bug supplements as they run out. The occasional plants that die off. In springtime you want to refresh all of your plants. So yeah, those are the reoccurring costs. And then I would also budget in a reptile vet. That can be a couple $100. And I would also recommend that you search in your local area to see if you have a local reptile vet. And I'm not talking a cat or dog vet, I'm talking like an exotic vet that has experience with chameleons, because it's not an if, it's a when, and you'll at least want to get a fecal test done to check for parasites, potentially x-rays, blood work, all that good stuff. So I would highly encourage you to do that before bringing a chameleon home, because if you don't have an exotic vet within driving distance, then honestly a chameleon may not be the right pet for you. So there's a lot that goes into the care of the chameleon, but we also need to talk about the environment. Where are we keeping the enclosure? So because chameleons are easily scared and stressed out, then we need to make sure we have somewhere in our home that's going to be low stress and low traffic. So somewhere where you can close the door and the chameleon will have privacy. What you don't want is them in your living room where there's like 5 different people in your house and cats and dogs and everyone, because to the chameleon, those are all threats and things that could potentially eat the chameleon, which is going to cause them to be stressed and scared. So you need to make sure you have somewhere in your home that you can lift the cage off of the ground, because height is safety for a chameleon, so you never want to put the cage directly on the floor. So somewhere where you can lift them up a little bit on, say, a table or a shelf, and then somewhere where they can have their own space, and somewhere where you can turn all the lights off at night, because chameleons need total darkness in order to sleep. So probably not somewhere where everyone's gonna be doing homework at the table with the lights on. Like, that would be a bad place to put your chameleon. Also need to consider if there are other pets in the home, especially things like cats and dogs, which could potentially hurt the chameleon. Unfortunately, I know of plenty of chameleons who have lost their tails and lost their lives to cats and dogs. So that's something you definitely need to consider with a chameleon. I can't say like if you have a cat, don't get a chameleon. Like, again, that's subjective. It's case by case. You have to know the personality of your cats and dogs to make that decision. And one more thing when we're talking about the environment for a chameleon, actually 2 more things. First thing is you need to have a room where you can control the temperature. So chameleons have very specific humidity and temperature requirements, and so you need to be able to control that in your home. If you keep your house at 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the summer, your chameleon's not going to make it. You need to have AC in your home or an AC unit that you can point towards your chameleon enclosure. Same if it gets too cold or too humid, like you need to have a way to be able to adjust their environment based off of their specific care requirements, which you should be able to learn during your research. And each species has slightly different care requirements, which makes some better than others for your environment, depending if you live somewhere humid, dry, hot, cold, all that good stuff. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up was kids who have multiple homes. So if they're splitting time between 2 different parents or grandparents and parents, whatever, a chameleon is not the kind of pet that can travel between homes. That's going to be super, super stressful. They need to be left alone, and they need to be in their enclosure that is set up correctly with the gradients, and they're not pets that do well with traveling even in a car for 15 minutes. Like, they need to be left alone. So you either need to have a parent or guardian or whoever who can babysit the chameleon and care for the chameleon while the kid is gone. And honestly, I don't know if I would recommend it if your kid isn't going to be there to take care of the chameleon and bouncing between houses. Another thing that I want to bring up when we're talking about moving and everything like that is going off to college. I see a lot of kids who are wanting to bring their chameleon to college. Chameleons cannot travel on planes. They are considered exotic animals and therefore cannot fly commercial. You would have to drive them or overnight ship them or something like that. Either way, there's no really good way to transport a chameleon to a college location. And then if we're talking about dorms or sororities or anything like that, those are going to be high traffic areas. Again, not ideal for a chameleon. Does your roommate know not to handle your chameleon and cause them stress? Like, I would just highly encourage or discourage, don't do this. Don't bring your chameleon to college. And if you do have a kid who's going off to college, then that's something to consider. Like, maybe you guys just wait a few years until your kid is able to have their own apartment in their own home, like me, right? And be able to give these guys the life that they deserve and the quality of life that they need. So moving on to just some general advice. Common mistakes I see people make that if you can do this or avoid doing this, then you'll be set up for success. So a very, very, very common mistake that drives me nuts is buying the Zoom In Chameleon kit. Do not buy the Chameleon kit. I'm gonna put like in all caps, like, do not buy the kit. You're better off buying everything separately. It's going to be so tempting. And the salesperson at the reptile store or PetSmart or wherever is going to tell you this is everything that you need. I'm telling you it's not. Right now. I'm telling you now. Okay? Don't say I didn't warn you. The reason why the cage is too small, the lights are wrong, there's not enough plants and branches, you've got this reptile carpet you don't even need, You are so much better off buying everything separately, because then you can get the correct enclosure from day one, and then you don't have the stress of moving your chameleon from a smaller cage to a bigger cage and then spending extra money. You can get the lights correct from day one. And a lot of people will say this, like, oh, well, it's just temporary. It's for the baby chameleon and I'll upgrade them when they get older. You wouldn't feed your baby kid or baby human candy and then like, oh, I'll just feed it fruits and vegetables and broccoli and vitamins when it's older. No, like this is the most important part of your chameleon's life, and when they can develop health and like good bones and things like that. So like it has to be correct from the beginning, and if it's not, they're not even gonna make it to adulthood. So buy everything separately. Also get the enclosure set up beforehand, so then you can make sure everything is correct before bringing your chameleon home. Okay, so that's piece of advice number 1. 2, fact check pet store and PetSmart employees. Because the reality is unrealistic for someone working at a store to know the level of detail that you need in order to be successful to care for a chameleon, as well as like 50 other species that they're caring for. Like that's just unrealistic, and it's not fair to put that on the person who's, working at these reptile stores. And just because they're wearing a name tag doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. It doesn't mean they don't, but it doesn't mean they do. You get what I'm saying? Like there's plenty of, I'm not bashing on pet store employees. I'm saying don't just believe it because someone wearing a name tag said it. Take that and then go fact check it. Back it up with your research. Like you've done all your research, you can go to the store and buy your supplies, but then you know exactly what you need to get because you've done the correct research. You're not relying on this person who may or may not know. That's what I'm trying to say. Another common mistake I see or misconception is that people think that they need to buy more than one chameleon, that they need a sibling, or they saw them together at the pet store so they want to keep them together. Don't do this. Chameleons are solitary animals and they do best by themselves. There is no benefit and no need to getting multiple chameleons, and you're honestly better off just getting a single one, because then you have to do something like this. You have to have visual barriers in between. They have to have their separate enclosures. Like if you're just getting into chameleons, just start with one. One is it's plenty, trust me, it's plenty of work just to have one chameleon. And just to touch on this again, you want to buy from a good breeder. This will make or break. And so you may be paying more for the chameleon from the breeder, but you're also getting the quality. Like you get what you pay for. So I would highly discourage you from trying to find a cheaper chameleon, or someone's like, can I get a panther chameleon for $100? I'm like, maybe, but not from anywhere good. Like you will get what you pay for. And like the breeders who do it right are having healthy adults who are breeding, who are able to then raise the babies correctly with correct care from the beginning, and then you're setting yourself up and your kid up for success. It makes a world's difference, because I cannot tell you how many times, so many times, people have brought a chameleon home and then I kid you not, within a week, a day, a month, the chameleon dies. And like if your chameleon dies within a week of getting it, that's not on you. That was a sick chameleon, because they will hide their illness. By the time they're showing signs of becoming sick, it's too late. That had nothing to do with you. You just bought a sick chameleon, and now your kid and yourself, whoever, is going through that heartbreak. That could have been totally avoided if you had bought from a good breeder. Okay, I am throwing a lot of information at you, but this is so important because I want you guys to be successful. If you're gonna do this, I want you to be able to do it right, and I want you to have the happily ever after story. So if everything that I've said so far, and you're like, okay, it's a lot, but like, I'm ready, I can do it, you can now move on to continuing doing your research. If anything I've said so far, and you're like, ooh, I don't know, then a chameleon may not be the right pet for you guys. And maybe not right now, maybe down the road, and that's okay. But don't think there's a way around it or a way to cut care or costs, or like if you cut corners, you will pay for it in the health of your chameleon. So we need to do this right. That being said, what I would recommend now is to then start to do research with your kid. It warms my heart when I hear people message me and they're like, yeah, me and my mom like watch all your videos together, or me and my grandparents watch all of your videos together, or me and my son watch your videos together. Like, do that. I literally have 100 videos go watch them and learn together. Like, what an amazing bonding experience for you and your kid, or with your parent, right? Like, and it should be a joint effort. This isn't something your kid can do on their own. They really can't. They're not the ones who have the car and the money and the responsibility, like, to raise this animal. You as a parent have to be all in, and you have to be taking care of this animal alongside your kid, right? Like, I've seen so many kids who have sick chameleons and feel helpless because they know what they need to do, but they don't have the support of their parent to set their chameleon up for success. They're like, oh, we already bought you the kit. Why do you need the new UVB bulb? Or like, why do we need to go to the vet or get them different bugs? Like, you have to be in it together. So watch the videos together, do all of your research. Another great resource I'm going to recommend is chameleonacademy.com. He has a podcast and a website. Not as kid-friendly, if I'm being honest, but would be great for you as the guardian to kind of do a deeper dive in chameleon care. Another good resource that you should check out is chameleonforums.com. This is a forum where you can post different threads, and this is great not only so you can ask your own questions and get answers from the community, but also you can read other people's information and the mistakes that they made and the questions that they've asked, so then you can learn. I honestly was on there for months before getting the chameleon and before I even started contributing to questions, because I was just a sponge trying to learn it all. So I wish you all the best in your chameleon endeavors and your research, and please take advantage of all the videos on my channel. And let me know down below in the comments, like, if you're a parent with a kid who has a chameleon, or you're a kid, like, what was the experience with your parent? And like, I'm not a parent. I didn't get into chameleons until I was an adult, so this is just me sharing my advice and things that I've seen through helping families. But I would love to hear firsthand experiences, what advice you have, what you would have done differently. Like, let me know down below, and so then other people can read through your comments and your experiences. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave any questions or comments down below. Feel free to subscribe so you know when I post a new video, and you can follow Neptune and all my chameleons on social media at Neptune the Chameleon. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye! That was a lot of talking. You good, Neptune? Luna, Apollo. Yeah, time for some food.